Microphone check 2 1 2. Ladies and gentlemen, it's your favorite bearded man, the one, the only, Bobbbaaaay. We're here in the content crib, content garage, cooking up on this beautiful Saturday morning. I wanted to do this Q&A to give back to the people, right? The people that are listening to my bearded man voice, to the people that are paying attention to the podcast, whether you pay attention to me on Instagram, YouTube, it does not matter. A lot of the content I put out is about other people. I would say interviews, the podcast, those are about other people. And I think I've been doing a pretty good job with showing a little bit behind the scenes of my life, whether I'm Ubering the streets of LA, whether I'm just kicking it with the homies at the crib, whatever it might be. But I figured this might be a good opportunity to actually answer some direct questions from listeners or followers. And we just had recently hit 600 subscribers on YouTube. So shout out to all the people that might be subscribed to my YouTube channel. If you're one of the first 600, know that I appreciate you, because when we're at 1 million, that's going to be dope. But I appreciate from the starting point of 600, then to 700 to 800, I appreciate all these little steps in the growth. And that's what makes it fun. That's what makes the journey fun. So this is going to be a Q&A. I have 10 questions, 10 good questions I got back. I posted this on my Instagram story, tweeted it out. I said it in a couple podcasts. I was just putting myself out there. Like, if you have certain questions for me, fire it away. I kind of like giving back, and I like answering questions, and I hope that it gives you guys some insight, and we'll see how people react to it. If you're watching visual on YouTube, you can see me. We're just sitting here cooking up. Or if you're just listening, you can picture a bearded man sitting in his garage, with clothes around him and just a white wall behind him, and he's got a glass of water and he's ready to have some fun. So if you're tuned in, thank you for joining to the Q&A with Bobbbaaaay. Let's get right on into it. So the first question that I have is from Shark Boy, and he asked, biggest struggle you had when beginning the podcast / pursuit of your own career. What is the setup you have for your podcast? So the biggest struggle that I had when beginning this podcast or pursuit of my career was probably the idea of starting, like actually following through and doing it. Like, I had the idea to start a podcast, but it took me 3 months essentially to finally get it going. And when I say 3 months, I wasn't sitting there religiously working on it every day, 10 hours a day. No, it took me a long time, because it was an idea, and I think I contemplated, was I actually going to do this? Was I not going to do it? I was trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together. So what took me a long time was actually following through and doing it. But once I was able to get the ball rolling and actually start the podcast, it actually got a lot easier. And what I've learned since beginning is about myself is that I don't really question ideas anymore. Like, if I have an idea or I have a vision for something, I just react to it and I try it. And that's something that I try to tell people. It's like, you don't fail from trying, you fail from not doing it. So, behind me, if you're watching visually or if you're just listening on the audio, I used to do like a brain food series that I started when I first got to LA, and it was just me ranting in front of my wall about random things. And I did it for like 10 weeks, and then I stopped because I was getting bored with it. Or, I tried different things, and if it works, it works. If I enjoy it, I enjoy it. I don't stop it because I'm not seeing the results. I stop because I don't enjoy the process anymore. So I think for me, the hardest part was really just starting and giving and trusting my gut of I have a vision for something. I want to do it, and I'm going to do it. I'm not going to worry about what other people are going to think. I'm not going to worry about if I'm going to get 5 plays, 100 plays, 200 plays. I'm not going to worry about anything like that. I'm going to worry about having a vision for what I want and following through and taking the small steps to get to that vision, to get to episode 90, to get to having all these different, guests that I've had on the podcast thus far. So, if that's coming from you, what was maybe you're having your own struggle, I would say just start and learn as you go. And part 2 of that question from Shark Boy is, what is the setup you have for your podcast? I'm not going to bore people with getting into the fine details of that, but you can go on to my website, purposeintheyouth.com. Under the blog section, I have literally, I think, 5 blogs in the past almost 2 years, which is pretty pretty pathetic. It's not even a blog section. It should just be like Bobbaaay's Bearded Thoughts section. And under there, you can read under, I think it was How to Launch a Podcast, and under there, I have all my equipment listed out. If you don't want to read the blog and you want to watch it on YouTube, you can go under my YouTube channel, under the playlist, under the way I see it, How to Launch a Podcast, and all the equipment is listed in the details there. So other thing is, don't worry about the setup of the podcast. Just worry about the content. If you have money to spend, go ahead, spend a lot of money on equipment. If you don't have the money, don't worry about it. It's not the biggest struggle. Question number 2. Alberto asked, since you already interviewed Drama, who is your next dream person to have on the podcast? That is a great question, Alberto. As I addressed in Drama's podcast, there were 3 people that have been very essential to getting me to where I am today. Aside from the people that I work with directly, aside from the support of listeners and followers, there have been 3 people. Drama was the older brother, the bigger brother, the mentor. I saw him delivering weekly podcasts, so I knew I had to deliver weekly podcasts. Then you had number 2 was Gary Vee. He was like the mental coach. He was the one that like kept fueling me to keep going. And then number 3 was, actually, I should have started with him, but Lewis Howes. Lewis Howes, the School of Greatness podcast. He was the one that inspired me to even want to start a podcast. Right now, he is my dream person. That is the next person that I want to get on the podcast, and I will get on the podcast. It's just a matter of timing. It's a matter of connecting dots. It's a matter of just trying to, show as much value that I can provide to Lewis without begging and saying, yo, man, you need to come on my podcast. Please come on my podcast. So definitely the next person I want is Lewis Howes, the School of Greatness podcast. He's out here in West Hollywood. And yeah, it's like I said, I was very, in my mind, I believed that I could get Drama at some point, and I was definitely thankful and grateful to have him at 84. To me, that's a very low number in the grand scheme of things. But Lewis Howes, School of Greatness, is going to be the next one. So great question, Alberto. And if you guys haven't checked out the School of Greatness podcast, I would check it out. Very inspiring, and you can learn a lot from some very passionate people. Question number 3, Jorge coming in. Besides Gary Vee, who do you recommend watching on YouTube? That's a great question. I truthfully don't watch that much YouTube anymore. I watch a lot of like interviews. So depending on what I'm trying to like watch, once again, School of Greatness podcast. I've watched some of Drama's Short Story and Long podcasts on there. I've watched a lot of like Breakfast Club interviews. It just depends on what my mood is. And I also think it depends on what you are interested in. Casey Neistat is, I don't even know if that's how you pronounce his last name. If I butchered that, I'm sorry, Casey. I like his content. He switches it up. He makes some really cool vlogs. I do pay attention to him. Other than that, I can't think of anybody off the top of my head. And I probably should have thought about this before I fired up the podcast, but it's all good. So, yeah, I mean, Casey's really good. Gary Vee's really good. And those are like Gary's like the GOAT, used to be the go-to, but you know what? There was one thing that he said a lot in his content when I was paying attention to him heavily for that first year before I launched the podcast. He was like, I can't wait for the day for you guys to stop watching my content. That's when I know I'm doing something right, or I did something right. And I never truly understood what he meant by that. I was like, why would I ever stop watching your content? Like, he was pretty much, what he was trying to say was, I want you guys to go create. I want you guys to go out there and be so busy that you don't have time to watch my stuff anymore. And honestly, truthfully, it got to the point where it's not like I don't have the time or whatever. I listen to a lot of podcasts because I'm always on the go, and when I'm Ubering, I can listen to stuff. But I don't really sit and watch anything anymore. I barely watch Netflix. I barely watch movies. I know it sounds crazy, but I just try to keep myself busy. I try to keep myself making content like this on a Saturday morning at 8 a.m. I try to, when I'm not either emailing or making content, I'm trying to Uber and make some money and pay my bills and stack up. And so I don't really pay attention to much YouTube anymore. So I hope that doesn't hurt you. And yeah, check out some of the people that I recommended though. Question number 4, coming from Alex Leadham. I hope I pronounced that last name correct. Any book recommendations? Well, this question also interesting. I don't read as much anymore. I mean, I never actually been a big reader. I mean, I remember even when I was a kid, I think it was in like 3rd grade, I used to have, it was like summer school because my reading wasn't great. And my mom had to pay like a tutor to come help me out. And I remember we'd sit on my porch in the summer in June and July sweating because we didn't have AC at the time. It took 18 years, I think, to convince my parents to allow myself to buy me an AC. And then on top of that, it took them another 2 years to finally buy ACs for the house. That's another side story that you guys don't really care to hear about. But I used to have to get help reading, and I'd sit on the porch, and what are these? I just said it. I can't remember. Anyway, I'd have somebody come over, tutor. They'd come over and help me out. And I just was never naturally good at reading. I also didn't do great on SATs. I think at the highest I ever got was like 1450. I don't think I ever got over 1500. So, and I still ended up getting into my dream college, so shout out to the people that, might not do great on SATs and they're trying to get into their dream schools. Don't let it stop you. Maybe go do a year at a different school and then transfer in like I did. But, I mean, the only couple that I can think of, because I just recently, any Tim Ferriss book I would highly recommend. I'm like a big fan of Tim Ferriss. He's just such a process-oriented guy, and he just is like a human crack. He just figures out things, and he's very knowledgeable, and he's talked to a lot of people, and he has a great podcast. Another great book, The School of Greatness book by Lewis Howes. I read that probably about a year and a half ago. I think it was the spring semester of my senior year. That was a good book. I've read some of Gary Vee's stuff. Malcolm Gladwell, I haven't read a lot of his books, but I would recommend his stuff. I was a big fan of Outliers and the whole 10,000 hours concept of putting in 10,000 hours at a certain craft before you become great at it. And I think that's necessary. Like, you have to put in the 10,000 hours. All the people that you see doing amazing things, they literally put in their 10,000 hours, and that's why they are where they are today, because they did the groundwork. They put in the groundwork to get to where they want to be. Other than that, I mean, like I said, Gary Vee, I would check out some of Lewis Howes. I would check out Tim Ferriss. And, yeah, I mean, like I said, I just don't read that much anymore, so I'm not going to sit here and tell you go read this book when I've never read it, but those would be some people I would recommend. Number 5. Matt DeSilva. He runs a podcast. Shout out to him real quick. Matt has to say, what are some tips to approach a bigger named guest? What things do they want to see in the podcast before agreeing to come on the show? So my approach with getting guests on the show, it doesn't even matter if they're bigger or if they're smaller. This is the same approach I have. If I'm emailing them, I email them, and in the shortest amount of sentences, usually it's like 4 small paragraphs of like 2 to 3 sentences each. I'll introduce who I am, what the podcast is about, who I've had on the podcast, not specifically names, but more so of like, I've had artists, DJs, producers, entrepreneurs, vloggers, makeup artists, film directors, photographers. I'm trying to paint them a picture of the types of people I've had on the podcast. Then I'll say another little mini paragraph of why I'm interested of getting them on the podcast, what I would like to cover in that podcast. And then at the end, I'll say, if you get a chance, check out one of my more recent podcasts, and then I'll link in a podcast that I think might be interesting to them for them to check out. There's 90 episodes I have out right now. It's kind of hard to say, go check it out. And they're just sitting there like, all right, which one do I actually check out? Instead, I'm going to give them the one they should check out, which right now is Dramas, because that is the most loved one we have right now on the podcast. Like, a lot of good feedback. The numbers, I mean, I don't care about numbers. If I had 2,000 plays or if I had 100,000 plays, there's nothing that changes about my process. I'm still going to keep doing this, but definitely the most plays on my YouTube channel right now. So I think you have to kind of sell it without selling it. Like, I also posted something recently on my Instagram. It's like all the people that have been on my podcast, not one of them have ever asked me, what are your analytics like? How many plays per video do you get on YouTube? How many numbers do you get? What's your iTunes plays? What's your SoundCloud plays? Nobody has ever asked me. So I think that's because of the vision, and that's because of what I'm actually trying to build. And thankfully they believe in it, or they respect it, or they don't care. They just want to be part of they just want to tell their story. I mean, who doesn't like talking about themselves for an hour? But I think what's important is you don't send people a book. A lot of people won't even respond, or they won't even read it. Be very, very lean when you're sending these emails, and make sure every word counts and everything. It's like a sales pitch without being a sales pitch. Don't sound desperate, but sound desperate. Don't sound desperate, but be honest with them about why you want them on the podcast, and just send the Hail Mary. Going back to the dramas, I sent that in February, and I heard from him, I think it was in April. April? I forget. It was like 2 months after the fact. So send the emails to the guests that you want to get on the show. I mean, you have literally nothing to lose. Just send the Hail Mary. If they respond, awesome. If they don't respond, who cares? Follow up one time. And if they don't respond after that, who cares? Keep moving along. I think a lot of people hold back. Going back to one of the earlier questions of not starting, of not even trusting the process of, wanting to start a podcast, people won't send that email. So send the email. Be confident in yourself. And the second part of that, what things do they want to see in the podcast before agreeing to come on the show? Yeah, I think it's really just sending them your best piece of work, your best podcast, so that when they click in, they can hear and see what you've been doing. You could do it one of two ways. You could send the video or the podcast that has the most plays, so it looks good and it looks appealing, or you could send the one that actually you think came out the best content. It could go both ways. I would send the best piece of content, and if they genuinely believe in what you're doing and they like what you're trying to do, the content wise, like to hear it, that's great. If they're just doing it because of the numbers, I don't know if that's necessarily somebody you want to get on the podcast, but don't let that stop you. So send the email, go big, see where you end up. Good question, Matt. Keep working on that podcast. I know you DM'd me saying that Purpose and Youth had some inspiration to your process of getting it launched, which was super dope for me to hear. So best of luck and keep hustling, bro. Question number 6. Coming from Michael V on YouTube. Favorite place you've been to other than Mass? Well, I would say California because I live here now, but I feel like that's an easy out. Where else has been a favorite place you've been? And I also want you guys to know I wrote these questions out a couple days ago, took them all, pulled them in, and then just throw them on here because I wanted this to be on the spot. I want the realness of Bobbbaaaay. Answer some Q&As, not some he thought about it for a week straight and had perfect answers. Favorite place you've been to other than Mass? I loved both. It's kind of like 2 for 1, but I loved going outside the country. That was super dope to me. I went to the Bahamas and Cancun. I think being outside the country just felt like an adrenaline rush. Favorite place you've been to other than Mass? Love Wells Beach, Maine. I'm just going to give you like a roll call of some because I'm not going to pick specifically one. Wells Beach, Maine. Go up there every year with the family. That's a good spot. Like I said, Cancun, Bahamas, pretty dope. I love being in LA. Anything about LA is pretty dope. I've been across the country. I've been in a lot of different states. Can't really say as corny, as cheesy as it might sound, or cliche, but the favorite place I've been to other than Mass is LA, and I live here now. Still pinch myself when I'm driving around Uber and when I wake up and I look outside and I see a palm tree in my backyard. It's still, I've been here for 9 months and it still hasn't really set in. It's pretty amazing to me. So LA, for sure. And I definitely push people to travel. Like I'm a big believer in it. I think it opens your eyes, even if you're going to a different part of your state, different part of your country. I don't even care if it's around the block that you've never been to. Traveling definitely opens your eyes on some things, and I think you learn to appreciate. Your home and the little things that that have helped get you to where you are today, and the people that have helped you become who you are. So That's enough of me rambling. Question number 7, coming from Nathan Rippey on YouTube. Any tips on staying motivated? Great question, Nathan. I think motivation is, this could go so many ways, but I mean, I think the best tip is to write. I don't have my phone on me, of course, it's outside the frame. I think the best way to stay motivated is to have a list of goals that seem so far reach that it motivates you. It gets you out of bed every morning. It helps you get back on track when you're about to get side distracted and go do things that aren't going to help you get to that goal. It's like all these little baby steps every day. Like I woke up today, I knew I'm going to shoot this vlog, I'm going to edit it, I'm going to make all the content, and that's enough, and I'm going to move on to the next thing. It's finding baby steps and finding little things that you can do that are going to help you get to these bigger goals. But I think you kind of, I don't know where I'm really going. I know I enjoy content. I know I want to build a platform. I know I want to build a following so that I can positively influence people. I love the spotlight. I love sitting in front of the camera. But I don't know where I'm exactly going. But what motivates me is seeing feedback from people, getting 10 actual questions from 10 people in this world that actually give a shit about Bobbbaaaay. That's super dope to me. I mean, there are definitely times when I'm not motivated. Like, believe me, I think people need to, you see all the biggest influencers that you follow and know damn well that they for sure are going through their own struggles too of just not motivated and then motivated. I'm a big believer of keeping your news feed, whether it's on Instagram, whether it's on Twitter. Pull out the stuff that doesn't motivate you. You should be looking at stuff that is picking you up, that's making you feel good, that's inspiring you. I'm a big believer of like this idea of what you consume. Food is going to affect how you look, like your body. If you eat good food, you're going to feel great. You're going to have a lot of energy. If you eat bad food, it's going to hurt you. It's going to make you lazy. It's going to, it's not good for your body. It's the same thing with social media. It's like I follow and I keep leaning out the amount of people I follow, not because of it looks good for it looks good. You only follow, 400 people and you have 2,000 people following you. No, I only want to see things that pick me up, that keep me inspired, that keep me up to date on certain things that I'm paying attention to in the world. So I think to stay motivated, cut out all the media consumption. If it's not helping you motivate you, if it's holding you back, cut that out from doing the things you want to do. Help staying motivated. I think it's important for mental and physical health. Work out every day. Meditate. That's very big, especially with mental health right now. I mean, this past week there was 2 major people that committed suicide, and that's just a tough subject in itself. What else? Staying motivated. And just writing down your goals, like writing down what you really, really want and aim high, because that's what's going to get you up. That's what's going to keep you moving forward, and dream big. I mean, it is cliche to say, but literally in my phone, if I ran through it, I don't have it with me right now, and I don't feel like getting up, but get on the Ellen Show, be a guest on the School of Greatness podcast, work out with The Rock, have a Netflix series. I mean, these are goals that sound so crazy, and maybe the average person is like, what do you, how are you going to pull that off? I don't know. I don't have the perfect plan, but I know that that's what gets me out of bed every morning. That's what keeps me focused. That's what motivates me, because I know kind of what I would like to see happen, not necessarily heart and set that it has to happen, or otherwise I won't be happy for the rest of my life. But having goals like that seem so far at reach, that's what motivates me. That's what picks me up. That's what keeps me going. The mental and physical health, that's also which keeps like the blood flowing, the consumption of the media, all that plays a part. So find what works best for you to stay motivated, and I hope that helps in some way or form. Question number 8. And before we do that, I'm going to take a little sip of this water because we're almost 25 minutes in. Might be a little less if I chop it up, but a little H2O never hurt nobody. You know what I'm saying? Question number 7. Actually, I lied. We just did question number 7. Question number 8 Coming from Coach HP. Shout out to Coach HP on YouTube. Did you play any sports growing up? If so, how has the sports mentality helped you with your hustle out in LA? Great question, Coach. I did play some sports growing up. I tried baseball for 1 year in 6th grade. Hated it. No offense to any baseball players out there. Just wasn't a fan. I played soccer up until, I think, 6th grade or 7th. I think it was the year I got kicked in the face by a soccer ball and I cried. And I left the field that I said, I'm all set with soccer. I think that was it. Or maybe it was going into high school. I kind of realized that it's going to get a lot more serious. And they had to run like 2 miles in like 11 minutes or 12 minutes. I was like, yeah, there's not a chance that's happening for me. I played basketball up until my sophomore year. And then realizing that I for sure was not the best player on the team. And I was not going to get a lot of playing time as I got into like more varsity area because there were a lot, our high school, shout out to Chicopee High School. We had a bomb squad, class of 2012. But I knew realistically like this was not going to last much longer and I was just going to ride the bench. And I also was kind of starting to work and I realized, okay, I like making money. I'm not going to get a lot of burn. And I also wasn't truly passionate about getting better. I wasn't putting in the work. So thankfully I recognized that, and so I stopped playing ball. But going back to the main question, how did the sports mentality help you with your hustle? I think the mentality of there's so many ways I could go with this, but I think sports mentality, team. I also played golf. I don't want to forget that. I played golf. I played golf sophomore, junior, senior year. Or did I play? Yeah, sophomore, junior, senior. I played golf out here. Young Tiger Woods. Wasn't great at that either, but we still made it work. I was never like an all-around great sports athlete, but I understood the fundamentals and I, for the most part, was able to play the game. But I never truthfully, I think my problem was that I never found one that I was truly passionate about, and I didn't necessarily put in the amount of hours and time that was necessary to get better at those sports, which is totally cool. It's totally cool. I just, at the time, I was really doing it to be with the homies and hang out with them. But I think sports mentality, it's like two things you can get from it. One, teamwork. That is super, super important. That's super important to how I've gotten that. How I operate here in LA. My homie Dylan helps me out tremendously with the podcast. Whether it's like I have an idea and I need somebody to bounce ideas off of, or he helps me a lot with graphics. He's been super essential to getting me to this point. So shout out to Dylan. Dylan Reese Music on Spotify. Give him a follow. So I think, that's helped me having, sports mentality of teamwork. For sure it's helped me out here. And 2, I think what it comes down to is who wants it more. In sports, it's pretty much, there's going to be a winner and there's going to be a loser. I hate to put it like that, but how bad do you want it? How bad, what are you willing to do in the short term for the long-term gain? What are you willing to sacrifice? When you're not working, somebody else out there is working on that craft, whatever your passion might be, whatever business you might be running. It doesn't matter. And I think that's what's helped me out in LA is I have a vision for what I want, kind of going back to the motivation part in the last question. I know what I want, and I'm just not going to get side distracted. And I think there was an interesting moment when I first got to LA. Truthfully, that first weekend, I think, or maybe it was the second week. I think the first weekend we kept it low-key, was still kind of running around LA, getting all this stuff done. But that second weekend, we went out, and I definitely drank way too much. Woke up the next morning, I just felt still really, really good off, drinking. And I had missed out on some opportunities to connect with people because I was just in the environment, drinking, having a good time with friends. And I realized that more opportunities are going to rise like that. And if I'm not on my game, I'm going to miss it. And I don't want that to happen. So going back to who wants it more, I realized like I need to make sure that I'm on point at all times because I never know who I'm going to bump shoulders with. I never know what opportunity is going to present itself. So I think what it comes down to is the sports mentality of knowing that I want it and I'm willing to do whatever is necessary to get what I want. And it's taken a long time to figure that out. But I hope I answered that question for you, Coach. Question number 9, coming from Albert on YouTube. What's the criteria for the type of people you want in your podcast? It's a great question, Albert. I don't even know myself. Kind of, in the beginning, I was just reaching out to people that were around me, that were doing passionate things. Producer, fashion designer, a photographer, a tour manager. These were just people around me that were doing passionate things. And really what it just comes down to a couple of things. One, is it somebody that inspires me? If so, then I'm going to reach out to them. It doesn't even matter what they do. And then 2, it kind of goes one of 2 ways. One, it's somebody that I'm super inspired by or that I pay attention to a lot, whether it's their media, whether it's their clothes, whatever it might be. Either I'm genuinely interested in them and want to learn more and get them on the podcast and have them branded as part of this project. Or the other thing is I might not have an idea of who this person is, but there's an angle that I see that I want to cover. I had a guy a couple months ago. He's in the medical marijuana industry out here in LA. He sells these vape pens, and I didn't know the guy at all, but I was genuinely interested in getting him on because of the angle. Marijuana, huge right now. This is a legal operation he runs, big business. I want to get him on the podcast. That didn't happen. Then you got somebody like Drama. Once again, I feel like I'm going to always bring up Drama for a long time, but that was for sure a big podcast for me. He was somebody that I was inspired by, was doing his own podcast, Short Story Long. I watched him as a kid on Robin Big and Fantasy Factory. So that was just I'm super inspired by him. I want to get him on the podcast versus somebody that is doing something that's unique or interesting that I haven't covered yet. So I think it goes one of 2 ways. One thing I always tell people, it's every person has a story. You watching it, whoever's watching it, who's to say your story isn't good enough to be on this podcast? That's not what it is. If people email me and I it's not something I necessarily want to cover, it's not. You shouldn't never be offended by that. It's just what are my interests? We are all interested in different things, and there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes to make these final podcasts that I just maybe don't want to do it, and that's cool. That should be cool. It's one thing to have a conversation with somebody. If I bump shoulders with you, I'll happy. Let's talk about what you do, and that's dope. But there's so much back end work that goes to this that when I commit to somebody or someone that I want to bring on the podcast, I really have to back them, because not only am I putting out as part of the brand, but like I said, there's a lot of research that goes on beforehand. There's a lot of post-production. There's a lot that goes on. So it's really hard for me to put out something online that's here's the criteria to get on the Purpose and Youth podcast. If you fill out every single box, send me an email. We'll get you in here. It's not like that. I can't actually say there's certain things. It just comes down to is it somebody that I genuinely care, that I want to learn more about, or that I'm inspired by, or is it an angle that I've never covered and I think would fit the podcast? So very, very hard for me to say, but I hope that gives you some insight, Albert, and I hope that gives some insight to the people that are listening or watching. Last question, number 10, coming from Matt B on YouTube. What was the lowest point you hit where you consider moving back to MA the most? Matt, I'm going to be completely honest with you. I'm going to keep it a bean and tell you straight up. There, in the past 9 months of, I'm guessing you're talking about since I've been in LA, because yeah, that'd be the only point. There has not been a single moment, half a second instance where I said, man, I need to go back to Massachusetts. And that's because I had everything in place by the time I got here that I feel like I was lucky, and I am lucky, and I recognize it because everything was lined up for me. So I had been out to LA 4 or 5 times before I moved out here. So I knew the land of LA, the beer land of Bobbbaaaay, LA. I knew what I was walking into. I knew the environment. I kind of knew what this place was about, so that was good. I had friends that were now living in LA. I had met 5, 6, 7 people from touring the previous year before coming out here. I had a couple of the guests that I had on the podcast living out here. I knew some people, so that was good. I had a way to make money, Uber, so I knew I was going to be able to pay my bills. I had a project. I was coming out here to work on the podcast. Little did I know I was going to step into all this other YouTube content and have fun with it. So I had a direction for what I was coming out here to do. And then the most important thing was I moved out here with my best friend, Dylan, and also moved in here with his homie from college that I had met, Steve, who runs the clothing store that I'm now sitting in right now. So I had everything lined up. And then since being here, there's never been that point of wanting to move back to MA, because I think a lot of the reasons people leave is they get into the wrong crowd, or they don't really have a direction for what they want to do, or they're hanging out with the wrong crowd. I mean, there's so many different things, horror stories that I hear in Ubers that I wish I could record and put out and share with you guys. But I've never had that low point, and I'm grateful for that. I've only continued to add more fuel to the fire in me since being here, because I keep getting inspired. I keep, connecting one dot to another, and that's building on one thing and then to this and then to that, or I'm meeting the right people, or things are just slowly falling into place. So if I'm being completely honest with you, there hasn't been a moment. And I want to say that if people are listening and are considering moving, I'm going to actually do a special podcast pretty soon about the process of moving to LA. I'm going to, get into some real details about that. So if you're interested in moving to LA, stay tuned. There'll be a piece of content, fire piece of content that'll be coming out about that. But if you're considering on moving places, try to set yourself up for that move as much as possible, whether it's finding jobs, whether it's getting homies to move there with you, whether it's kind of networking. Definitely go visit the places that you want to move before you go, because maybe you'll realize this actually isn't the place I want to be. A lot of people see LA on TV and the movies, and there are a lot of parts that are like that. I shouldn't say a lot of parts. I mean, there are parts that are like that, the beach, the Rodeo Drive, the Lambos, the this, the that. But there are parts of the city that aren't like that are, there's homeless people, there's houses, there's housing where, 3-4 families live together. Because it's expensive to live out here. So go visit the places you want to go to if you're interested in moving. And I'm steering away from the question. But I hope people are actually taking that leap, because it'll be the best thing you ever did for yourself. If you're truly, truly serious about moving somewhere, just do it. But for me, like I said, I've been very fortunate, and I'm happy that things have worked out the way they have, and it's only getting better. And we're just going to keep grinding. We're going to keep hustling, and we're just going to keep making things happen. That's it. 10 questions. We're looking at almost about 40 minutes. It's going to be maybe a little less when I chop up this video. But thank you guys. I hope this was insightful, or you learned something, or you learned something about me you wanted to know. I want to start putting out more content that at least can show you guys some of my story, and I hope this Q&A was beneficial. Definitely let me know whether you're watching it on YouTube. Drop a comment, whether you're listening on the podcast app. Maybe, throw up an Instagram story and tag me in it, and just tell me one thing that you learned, or whatever it might be. I hope this was beneficial. Like I said, this stemmed from hitting 600 subs on YouTube and wanting to kind of give back, and hope that this would be valuable to the people that listen or watch or whatever. But the Bearded Man Bobbbaaaay appreciates your support on all this content. That means the world to me. I really don't care about numbers. I'm going to continue to keep putting out this content, keep moving forward, keep pushing myself to grow, and, create something that I think is dope, unique, valuable, makes people laugh, whatever it might be. But yeah, thank you for tuning in. Hope this is beneficial. You guys have a great rest of your day, night, whatever, wherever you are watching this. Just know I appreciate you. So you guys have a great rest of your day, and we'll catch you next time. B.O.B. signing off. It's your favorite Bearded Man, the one, the only, Bobbbaaaay. We'll catch you next time. See ya. See ya. See ya.